Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to H.R. 1815, the SEC Disclosure Effectiveness Testing Act of 2019, and I grant myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Democrats claim that this bill would, quote, build on efforts to engage in investor testing by requiring the SEC to conduct usability testing of any new disclosure, close quote. Well, if my friends on the other side really wanted to build on efforts to engage in investor testing, I believe they would have actually worked with the Republicans on the committee and the Securities and Exchange Commission to craft a bill that would actually be signed into law. Unfortunately, this bill is a deliberate effort to not only delay the SEC's rulemaking on regulation best interest and Form CRS, it's an effort to tie the SEC's hands with regard to future disclosure rulemakings and may have actually an effect even on past rulemakings. In fact, what the bill's author won't tell you is that the SEC already conducted investor testing on the very disclosure regulation Democrats are targeting with this particular bill. With Reg BI, over 1,800 Main Street investors nationwide were surveyed about the regulation. There were 31 one-on-one interviews in depth with retail investors. 7 roundtables were held that the SEC gained input from. And finally, more than 6,000 comment letters were received by the SEC before they actually put together the Reg BI. The SEC collected all this, analyzed the information from all of those sources, and very carefully crafted what had been a very contentious and, frankly, outside the bounds of what had normally been accepted with regulation best interest by having the Department of Labor trying to drive this rather than the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I believe that they have a good product. So the SEC used this information to adopt a workable regulation, all without the help, or the so-called help, of H.R. 1815. So what does the final rulemaking package on Reg BI and Form CRS accomplish? Well, it raises the standard of care owed by broker-dealers to retail investors, and that, at the end of the day, is what this is all about. It's a standard we agree that needed to be addressed. But why make the SEC do it again, further delay a rulemaking that makes significant improvements for Main Street investors? It's a rule that is in place. I can only surmise it's because my friends on the other side actually didn't like the outcome and didn't like what they heard in that investor testing. Not only did they not like the current outcome for Reg BI and Form CRS, but my friends on the other side of the aisle want to tie the SEC's hands in future disclosure rulemaking. They accomplish this by requiring investor testing for documents and information that are relied on or, quote, substantially likely to be materially relied upon by retail investors, close quote. Now, I don't know what that phrase means. Now, here's why I don't know what that phrase means, is because it wasn't in the version of the bill reported out of the committee. That's a phrase thrown in at the last minute by my friends on the other side of the aisle. Now, if that weren't enough, the bill targets the SEC's previous disclosure rulemaking. H.R. 1815 requires the SEC to retroactively conduct investor testing on similar disclosure rulemakings that were finalized before enactment of this bill. This means disclosure rules finalized 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years ago could be captured and will be captured by this bill. So finally, if the subjecting past and future disclosure rulemakings to investor testing weren't enough, the bill captures present rulemaking. H.R. 1815 creates a bureaucratic loop by requiring the SEC to conduct investor testing if substantive changes are made to a proposed rulemaking and those changes are untested before the rules are finalized. What does this bill mean for everyday investors? It means more bureaucracy. It means less certainty. Certainly, it does not speed up what all agree is an issue that needs to be addressed. There's no doubt investor testing is an effective tool for designing smart, workable regulatory frameworks to benefit the Main Street investor. It can help craft disclosures and information that everyday investors can actually understand and use. It does not have to come in the form of a mandate. This bill is not only a delay tactic, but it will drastically undermine the ability of the SEC to do its primary job of protecting investors. Under the last administration, that's all we heard about on the committee. I've been on this subcommittee that handles this, and all we heard was how Congress was undercutting the Securities and Exchange Commission and wasn't supporting it enough, wasn't allowing it to do its job. And what are my friends now doing? The exact thing that they were complaining about. So by delaying it, or in some cases preventing the SEC from finalizing rules intended to protect investors and diverting resources from cybersecurity and enforcement actions, Main Street investors this bill claims to serve will only be harmed. I'm confident the SEC can and will devote the utmost attention and consideration to help everyday American investors without this particular bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.